I began my journey into chronicling the censorship industrial complex and its various nodes, really starting in 2016. Free speech diplomacy was a concept that really began in the United States in the 1940s. After World War II, an iron curtain descended over Central and Eastern Europe, and the communist proclivity to crack down on free speech meant it was very difficult to build resistance movements and build up alternatives to communist government. So free speech began to be championed as this democratic ideal by our State Department, starting with the first democratic election in Italy. This was on April 18th, 1948. NSC 1-1, the very first National Security Council memo, was about the U.S.'s strategic position in Italy and the importance of ensuring that the pro-Western candidate who was up for election defeated the pro-Soviet Union candidate. And at the time, that candidate was losing about 60-40 in the early polling in the run-up to that. Our spies, through the Central Intelligence Agency, began to do operations in Italy in order to try to tilt that election. And in the end, the pro-U.S. candidate won. And this was deemed to be such a massive success by the U.S. State Department, by the National Security Council, that they proposed a new doctrine, an inauguration of organized political warfare, to take this Italy model and use it for effectively every country on earth.
The presence of the United States as a leading power in the free world is involved in your work directly.
The U.S. Agency for International Development, which has a very cute play on, linguistically, you see USAID, and so you think it's an aid organization.
The people who are opposed to aid should realize that this is a very powerful source of strength for us. It permits us to exert influence for the maintenance of freedom.
By 1967, USAID was already paying the special forces recruited, CIA-directed hillside guerrillas in Cambodia to pay for their economic construction of their villages. This is a way to join this CIA mercenary group, by the way, is they're getting funded by USAID. But USAID even went a step further and bought 2 airplanes for them in order to transport weapons and narcotics and supplies. I say this, and oftentimes people will laugh, and then they'll be surprised when I keep a relatively straight face, but I always say when it's too dirty for the CIA, you give it to USAID. All covert actions had to be approved in writing by the US president so that you could never have a situation again like in the 1960s and 70s where a president could say, the CIA went rogue, I didn't know about it. That restriction is not on the U.S. Agency for International Development. They can do the exact same thing that the CIA does, but it doesn't need to be approved by the president.
The program used cell phone text messaging to circumvent Cuba's strict internet restrictions. At its peak, it drew in more than 40,000 Cubans. However, its subscribers were completely unaware they were using a U.S. government program and giving American contractors their private data to potentially use for political purposes. Perhaps most shockingly, the Cuban Twitter program was not paid for and run by a spy agency such as the CIA. Instead, it was the brainchild of USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, best known for overseeing billions of dollars in U.S. humanitarian aid.
The origins of the National Endowment for Democracy come from the CIA, who pushed Ronald Reagan for this structure because the Reagan White House was not able to, had a very ambitious foreign policy. And in 1982, USAID spits back the idea, we'll call it the National Endowment for Democracy.
The National Endowment for Democracy is, just as we've been told, more than bipartisan. It's a genuine partnership of Republicans and Democrats, of labor and business.
These 4 core fours, the IRI, the NDI, the Solidarity Center and CPAY for private enterprise. Ned makes the argument, it used to have all its grants public because, that's how we justify that it's not an intelligence operation. See, we publicly say, what the grants are and to which groups. The problem is making that public and knowing that Ned has such a huge role in toppling governments. And as soon as Ned declares your government a threat to democracy, every group that they're funding in that country under their democracy promotion remit is to overthrow you.